Well, here we are. We've made it to segment number 5 in our Foundations of Biblical Principles of Stewardship and Fund Development. And it's Bob here again, and we're going to talk today about the basics of fund development. As you'll recall, we have talked about the biblical principles behind it, where we notice that God owns everything, people manage God owned resources, and to be competent, mature, or effective in your management is really a learned process. Then we took a look at being dependent on external sources, and we came to the conclusion that local ministry is best funded locally, no matter where that ministry is located in the world. We looked at communication, and we looked at strategic planning and the important roles that they play. And now today we're looking at the basics of fund development. We have 3 publics that will entrust their funds to our ministry. And those groups basically are people who pay for services. Many of us sell CDs, books. We may be a school and we charge tuition for people to come, and so people pay for a service of some sort. Then there are those who give because they believe in the ministry itself. And finally, there are those who lend to a ministry. And this is a really small group. We won't spend much time on it simply because typically this group may be involved with a large institution or university where they basically say, here's a large sum of money. We will lend it to you for 15 years. You can use the interest off from it, and at the end of 15 years, we want that money back. That probably isn't going to happen with too many of our ministries, so let's focus on the bottom 2. Many of us have people who pay for some service as a result of our ministry. And it's this group of people that we have the best opportunity to mold into people who give, not because they're going to get any good or service out of it, but simply because they believe in the mission, the vision, they see God at work, they see accountability and transparency in the leadership, and they say, we believe that God's resources are best used to achieve God's plan by entrusting it to this ministry. That's why we give. Many of us get confused at times when we look at the offering plate being passed in church on Sunday. We look at that and we see the plate walk past us and we say, hey, look at everyone giving today. But allow me to challenge your thought in that I believe many people sitting in church pews today around the world are literally paying for services. They're putting a few coins in, they're tipping the pastor for a good sermon, they're paying for what essentially is childcare. We call it Sunday school or a children's ministry, but the reality is I'm paying someone else to take care of my kids for an hour, and it gives me a break. And I get to sit with adults and talk with them and sing songs, and so I pay for that service. I'm not necessarily giving, I'm just paying. And I think it's important for us to recognize this distinction. I also want us to recognize that if we want to teach people to learn the grace of giving, some of the best people we need to be talking to first are people who currently pay for services. They understand the ministry, they have a bit of an understanding of it, and we can help them grasp the mission and vision better. There's one other triangle I want to share with you, and it's the sources of where funds come from. I've got some statistics, and they may shock you a little. This is from the United States. I don't know what the statistics are in your country, but in the U.S., if you look at this, 80% of all of the funds that come in for charitable organizations come in from individuals and families. 12% of all the funds that are used for charitable purposes come from organizations, churches, the government, foundations, that type of thing, and only 8% come from corporations. Yet as ministry leaders, where do we spend 80% of our time trying to drum up resources? We go to the people with the big dollars. We look at corporations and we say, they have all the funds necessary to make this ministry a success. So we should spend all of our time trying to help them see the value of our ministry so that they want to give to it. When the reality is, we could find 500 people involved in our ministry who are individuals and families who, as a result of who they are, children of God, They desire to grow in the grace of giving anyway. You know, a corporation is in business to make a profit. And giving money away is diametrically opposed to their end result. It actually lowers their profits, so they are not motivated at all by giving. And I think we spend too much of our time in ministry focusing on these top two categories and saying, let's go hit up the big dollars. When the reality is, if I need $5,000, I am much better off having 10 people who give 500 or 100 people who give 50 instead of looking for one person to give 5,000. Because if that one person is walking across the road and a city bus takes them out, it takes away the funding for the ministry as well. But if I have 100 people giving $50 every month, that 100 people, if one of them, something happens to their family and they stop giving, I still have 99% of the income that was coming into the ministry. It gives us a broader foundation. It gives us a rock and a firm foundation on which to build our ministry. And that's why when Jesus said, a wise man builds his house upon the rock, I believe that covers everything we do in ministry, including fund development.